Sam Bankman-Fried was the wonder boy face of crypto as recently as the summer of 2022. A 30-year-old who built one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, a famed philanthropist worth an estimated $16 billion, and a major Democratic fundraiser who immediately gained favor in Washington. By early November, he was at the heart of an immense scandal that had destroyed both his enterprise and his image as an uncannily brilliant humanitarian billionaire. Bankman-Fried was detained in the Bahamas in December and charged with wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, among other things. He has since been extradited to the United States and released on a $250 million bond, the largest ever pretrial bond according to Reuters. But how did one guy lose billions of dollars of user funds, and what does the future hold for Samuel Bankman-Fried and FTX customers and investors? SBF, or Sam Bankman-Fried, is at the core of this year's biggest scandal. In November, his cryptocurrency exchange FTX went bankrupt, leaving millions of consumers in the lurch. The collapse of FTX is not a normal story of cryptocurrency volatility or investor risk-taking. It collapsed not because of bad luck, but because of what now looks to be unsustainable levels of deception. On the surface, FTX appeared to be thriving. It had made many high-profile acquisitions and bailed out other failed crypto firms in the previous year, but it was actually drowning itself in debt. According to reports, at least $1 billion in client funds has gone missing. The astonishing discrepancy between appearance and reality has resulted in Bankman's reputation plummeting faster than anything in recent memory. The Justice Department and the SEC began investigating FTX shortly after its collapse, and his friends and fans in crypto, philanthropic, and political circles have quickly distanced themselves from the man commonly considered the king of crypto. According to a top Democratic strategist who spoke on the condition of anonymity in order to protect their clients, politicians who received donations from Bankman-Fried, who spent approximately $40 million during the midterm election cycle, are considering returning the funds. On November 10th, Bankman-Fried issued a public apology. "I effed up and should have done better," he wrote on Twitter. "I also should have been communicating more very recently." He pointed to a poor internal labeling of bank-related accounts as one reason why FTX didn't have the liquidity to return money to clients. In the previous year, Bankman-Fried rose to attention as a model of how the ultra-rich, with seemingly limitless riches, may utilize it for good. He's been the focus of numerous profiles and graced the cover of Fortune magazine's September issue. The media depicted him as an honest, nerdy savant, praising his down-to-earth demeanor, unruly mop of hair, preference for t-shirts and shorts, and his Toyota Corolla. Investors liked the fact that he wasn't a stuffy entrepreneur. He played computer games during pitch meetings, and his quirks, like those of other modern-day founders, were interpreted as proof of his unique genius. Meanwhile, Bankman-Fried came out as a billionaire who was unimpressed by the glamour and pomp of the conventional billionaire's lifestyle. The FTX Foundation, Bankman's charitable arm, claims to have donated more than $190 million to date. "It's hard to spend more than millions a year in an effective way on yourself, even if you wanted to," he told Yahoo Finance earlier this year. "And I think that's why we see super yachts, because a lot of people literally can't figure out anything else to do with their money." Given the extent of Bankman-Fried's influence, his fall has generated concern in a number of circles. Customers of FTX were largely individual traders, and many of them now feel they've lost their whole life savings. The collapse of FTX has harmed the stability of the broader crypto market, and the price of Bitcoin, the world's most valuable digital currency, has plummeted. The FTX Future Fund has stated that it will most likely be unable to honor all of its recipient promises, and Bankman's financial collapse may generate further ripples in philanthropy. The effective altruism group Open Philanthropy has already stated that the closure of the FTX Foundation will have an impact on its grant-making strategy. Bankman-Fried had dedicated 99% of his money for the public benefit, and now it's all gone. If the claim that FTX used $10 billion in cash to assist Alameda Research is true, Bankman-Fried might face jail time, according to John Reed Stark, a former SEC enforcement attorney and cybersecurity law specialist. If these facts are true, someone came to me as a client and said, "Here's what I did. I robbed my customers to enrich myself." That's very serious. It goes far beyond securities violations. Everyone now wants answers, including Congress, where SBF was scheduled to speak. In an unexpected turn of events, he was detained on Monday night in the Bahamas, where he was residing, at the request of the U.S. government. Two of Sam Bankman-Fried's key accomplices have also pleaded guilty to criminal charges. Caroline Eliason The 28-year-old former CEO of Alameda Research, a trading firm founded by Bankman-Fried and Gary Wang, the 29-year-old co-founder of FTX, pleaded guilty to charges related to their roles in the fraud that contributed to FTX's downfall, according to U.S. Attorney Damian Williams in a video statement posted on social media. They are both collaborating with the Southern District of New York, Williams said, adding that anyone else involved in the fraud should contact his office as well. He assured me that his staff would continue to work on the case around the clock. The guilty pleas were made as Bankman-Fried was being extradited from the Bahamas by U.S. authorities to face charges related to his participation in the failure of FTX. Ellison and Wang agreed to plead guilty to charges including wire fraud, security fraud, and commodities fraud in exchange for leniency at sentencing, provided they cooperate fully, according to agreements signed with prosecutors on December 19th. Without a cooperation agreement, Ellison could face up to 110 years in jail for her offenses, according to the plea agreement she signed. It obliged her to testify truthfully before any grand jury or trial and to lose any proceeds of her misdeeds. She was released on $250,000 bail and was only allowed to travel within the continental United States. Wang's plea agreement said that he might face up to 50 years in prison if he did not sign the cooperation agreement. His arrangement also required his testimony and allowed him to be released on $250,000 bail with travel limited to the continental United States. Gary has accepted responsibility for his acts and takes his duty as a cooperating witness seriously, according to Wang's lawyer, Ilan Graf. The Securities and Exchange Commission charged Wang and Ellison with conspiring with Bankman-Fried in a plot to cheat FTX investors and deceive its consumers in a parallel civil complaint. According to the SEC, Wang wrote the software code that allowed Alameda to redirect FTX customers' monies. Ellison subsequently utilized the stolen funds to fund Alameda's trading activities. According to the complaint, the defendants were active participants in the scheme and participated in conduct that was vital to its success. Bankman-Fried was seen leaving a magistrate court in Nassau in a dark SUV after surrendering his right to challenge the extradition. According to Bahamian Attorney General Ryan Pinder, the provisional arrest and subsequent written consent by Bankman-Fried to be extradited without formal extradition processes fits the provision of the extradition treaty between the U.S. and the Bahamas and the nation's Extradition Act. SBF was taken to New York following his detention after deciding not to contest his extradition. Inside the courts, reunited with his parents and lawyers, an apparently silent Bankman-Fried shook the hand of a supporter before walking out the door, where photographers and film teams swarmed him until he left in a car. He left the Manhattan courthouse with his parents after they agreed to sign a $250 million bond and keep him at their California home while he awaits trial on allegations of misleading investors and stealing customer direct deposits on his FTX trading platform. Bankman-Fried, 30, perpetrated a fraud of epic proportions, according to Assistant U.S. Attorney Nicholas Roos in U.S. District Court. Roos proposed harsh bail conditions, including a $250 million bond, and the biggest federal pretrial bond ever, according to Roos, and house arrest at his parents' home in Palo Alto, California. According to Roos, one major factor for granted bail was that Bankman-Fried decided to waive an extradition hearing. Magistrate Judge Gabrielle W. Gorenstein authorized the bond and the house arrest request, but he insisted on Bankman-Fried wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet before leaving the courthouse. Bankman-Fried sat between his lawyers in a suit and tie and did not speak during the hearing except to respond to the court. Near the end, Gorenstein asked him whether he realized that if he chose to run, he would face jail and a $250 million fine. "I do," Bankman-Fried replied. Soon after, the session finished, and Bankman-Fried was escorted from the courthouse by 2 U.S. Marshals, his hands in his front jeans pockets. His bail conditions also stipulate that he not open any lines of credit in excess of $1,000. According to Roos, the bond was to be secured by the equity in his parents' home as well as the signatures of his parents and 2 other financially responsible people with significant assets. The bail was defined as a personal recognizance bond, which meant that the collateral was not required to cover the bail sum.